and welcome to XML Stories brought to you by Publisher Speak in collaboration with Markup UK. In this series, we bring to you a variety of case studies and stories about how XML and related technologies have helped publishers publish their documents better. Publisher Speak is a community platform for professionals in the publishing industry. We bring you the latest updates, discussions on the freshest ideas, technology innovations, customer solutions, and more. Our partner for this series is Markup UK. Markup UK is a non-profit organization of XML practitioners who aim to educate professionals about the benefits of XML and markup technologies. Today, I'm talking to Gert of Markup UK. Gert is an independent consultant who provides XML solutions to publishers across the world. In today's episode, we want to talk about an educational publisher and their transition to XML. Now, just a little bit of a background about educational publishing. About a quarter of the world's population is under 15 years of age, and a majority of this age group is in school. And one of the successful ways by which education is imparted is through textbooks. So in today's episode, we are going to be talking about how an educational publisher successfully embraced XML and saw a lot of benefits through this transition. So Gert, tell us a little bit more.
This publisher is what they call educational publisher. So what they mainly do is books for school children, so books to be used in school, and even books to be used in university. So some of their authors are like specialists in mathematics for the for high school, but some of their authors are professors that are making a book for university. So some of the stuff they publish is school books, and some of the stuff they publish is like really expert work meant for students. But it's all educational.
And what were their market drivers? What was really the key thing that this publisher was after?
Well, this publisher wants to publish nice printed books with high quality educational material, and they're also started looking at more interactive books, as would say CD-ROM type of thing still, or DVD within the book, or just websites accompanying the printed books.
Now, why did you decide to migrate to XML for this particular publisher?
It's the publisher themselves that decided they wanted to go to XML, especially because, they heard the story, create XML and publish in all different formats if you do that well. And they were hoping to have a single source for their printed books and for their the collateral that comes next to it, the website and animations and all that stuff that could be found on the web, little videos, references to that. And basically, they also started wondering, they wanted a better solution for revision work, where subject matter experts and authors were before just reviewing the books from a print delivered by a frame maker typesetter. And they had heard about XML workflows where they could review in a browser, and well, actually not the authors, but they would want to allow the authors to review all the preprints in a browser and make comments rather than have it printed with little yellow post-its all over. That would then be picked up again by the typesetters in FrameMaker.
That's very interesting. So it looks like their primary motivation to go towards XML was to bring in a certain consistent structure. And also a very key aspect over here was to reduce the feedback cycles, or to improve the revision cycles there. So I'm very curious, why was, and you mentioned FrameMaker over here, but why was FrameMaker not quite suited for this author revision cycles. Why what was the challenge there?
I'm not a FrameMaker typesetter, so it's a very complex product for me. There's a lot of things I don't understand in FrameMaker, and I think it was the same to the subject matter experts. They know how to deal with Word, but FrameMaker is a complex typesetting product. And yeah, if you have all your material in FrameMaker, and you want to allow an author to do the revisions on the FrameMaker documents, well, there's a lot of FrameMaker training involved. So I think the sort of the obvious way of doing it is typeset everything in FrameMaker by a FrameMaker specialist, print it, and hand the book over to the content matter, the content matter expert for revision.
So, I mean, you mentioned that, obviously one of the goals for this project was to reduce the number of feedback cycles, or to bring in that sort of optimization. What were all the feedback cycles that were involved in this project?
I think there's a pretty classical workflow. The author creates the book, it gets typeset, and then the author is the first one to review the result. And there can be quite a few cycles between the author or the subject matter experts before the content of the book reaches a certain level. And then obviously after that, there's an editor or the redaction that has to sort of approve. They check the consistency. Sometimes you have multiple authors in a book, so there is a consistency check throughout, assisting the authors actually improving the quality of the content. And after that, there's people working on the actual typesetting, and then there usually is someone responsible for the final layout across chapters, maybe. So there's, I think it's a classical publisher's workflow we're looking at.
So several rounds of checking for the content, and then several rounds of probably quality checking, and then the layout as well. So there are multiple aspects of the publishing that are checked in different feedback cycles, is what I'm hearing, right? So in this project, so obviously you went from a FrameMaker to an XML workflow. What was this process of how were you able to transform from a FrameMaker based workflow to an XML based workflow? So what were the steps?
The simple answer to that question is save as XML. There is an export from FrameMaker to XML, and that's where the fun starts, because there's some transformation work to be done from what is an XML created by a page-oriented tool or product into a structured XML. So there are some challenges, but basically we started from save as XML and then work from there. The real challenge is getting high quality images back in, which very often is just simply manual work.
So I wanted to just ask you, in this project, what kind of innovations was possible because the publisher now moved to an XML first workflow?
In interactivity of a different level. In an earlier state, as soon as the FrameMaker book was finished, it was possible to create automatically an EPUB from it, or even web pages from it, one way or another. But once you have a book online, especially when it's an educational book with exercises, the ambition is higher. And what this publisher wanted to do is allow functionality such as, the exercise with a chapter is an online exercise with a form you have to fill or drawings you have to make online. And you only see the second exercise after you successfully answered the first one. So they were looking into that kind of added value.
So a lot more intelligence, so to speak, could be built into the content where this sort of interaction is now possible because we are starting off from XML is what I'm hearing, right? So that's
Yes,
fantastic.
correct.
So can you talk a little bit about the people who had to be involved in adopting to this change now from, from the way they were doing it earlier to now an XML workflow?
Yeah, well, the technical department had to build up some knowledge in XML and XSLT transformations, and to manage all of that. And this company also purchased an online XML editor product. They are now using for the review cycles, and some authors, I believe, author most of the book in this WYSIWYG authoring environment. So there was a general change from post-its to doing or adding comments through a browser, but I don't think it's especially the subject matter experts and the redaction that got involved in using this XML WYSIWYG authoring, and there was little changing in, well, the typesetters are still doing what they do best, typesetting, with less frustration and a bit less work, because they got rid of all the yellow post-its.
So it looks like what I'm hearing is the content experts, keep them with the content. Don't confuse them with the layouts. Let the content cycle finish off, and then we go into the typesetting part of it, right? So the moving to an XML first workflow enables the subject matter experts to focus on the content, right? Would you say that's
Correct, yeah.
that's kind of what was possible?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
With this project, right? If you were to say what was the one significant win because of this transformation for this publisher, what would that be?
I would say there are two. The first one is a very technical one. The revision cycle or the revision process has completely changed from passing along papers with notes on it or post-its to an XML only workflow, where especially the content authors, the content specialists work on the screen, and almost if something needs to be changed, do it in XML directly through a WYSIWYG authoring environment. The second win is that they now have from one XML source multiple output formats, and especially enrich, because they had HTML versions of their books before, but now they have XML versions with more functionality.
That's fantastic. That's really interesting to hear that the two big wins for this particular project was, I think, in terms of cost savings because of the reduced number of cycles. And number two is a consistent one single source of truth for multiple formats. I think that's fantastic. What else is on the roadmap for this particular project? What else do you foresee?
More books to be migrated, and quite some educational publishers are moving to real educational platforms, lying on top of SCORM objects, learning modules, having the XML and package them and really almost start selling modules as training modules rather than publish books. I think that is definitely an evolution they're looking at the moment.
Fantastic. Thank you, Gert, for joining us on today's episode of XML Stories and sharing with us yet another informative XML publishing story. In today's episode, we learned about how an educational publisher transitioned to an XML first workflow and benefited immensely, about how they were able to reduce the number of feedback cycles that were required to finalize the content, and about how they were able to publish to different formats with one single source of truth. Stay tuned to Publisher Speak for other similar stories, and until next time, happy